Welcome to the Kawartha Small Business Podcast, where we believe the Kawarthas can be the most thriving region in Canada for small business. I'm Brian Rump from Profit Coach.
And I'm Matt Garrity from Matty G Digital.
And before we get started, head over to kawarthasmallbusinesspodcast.ca/checklist and download Matt and Brian's marketing checklist for Kawartha small businesses. All right, Matt, lead us into our topic today.
I like how you're going to throw me into this. I think we need to talk about the fact that you're debuting brand new glasses. And I'm trying to think of something dark and ominous because I'm looking at the topic and it's talking about bank secrets. So in typical fashion, I'll sit here for the next 20 to 30 minutes not saying anything. But if you want to tee it up with like a really dark, ominous intro to how awful and terrible the bank is and go from there.
All right. So it's not totally how awful and terrible they are. You're right. This topic is a lot of stuff I want to just talk about. I know all these bank secrets. So I thought, let's have a conversation about the bank. And so maybe I'll spill all my guts on all of the things that I know about banks that not everyone necessarily does.
Can you tell us about people locally that have done terrible things at the bank, like maybe lost a lot of money, gone into debt, ruined families? If you could name names and businesses, that would be great.
Oh, that would be great. No, I won't name names. This is the secrets, I guess, are more how the bank operates. There are some crazy stories, though, that I do have that will feed into some of our topics and sort of could help explain them. I haven't really met a lot of people who have egregiously sort of committed either internal fraud at the bank or did things by mistake. But the bank is layers and layers of old systems put together, and it's really easy to sometimes make mistakes that are hard to be reversed. And it can really hurt clients sometimes. So it's one thing to be cognizant of. It doesn't flow smooth. I think people put a lot of respect into banks and they think, the bank knows all. They are big business, so they must run really smoothly. They must have a lot figured out with their processes and their technology, but they don't.
Oh, no, there's no way. If you think back on when they rolled out the online banking to I work with, are we going to say bank names?
Yeah, we could say bank names. We're not trashing anyone. And, full disclosure, I know these because I used to work with Bank of Montreal. In the sort of banker community, I still keep in touch with people who work there. People move to other banks.
Mm-hmm.
You always meet people who have worked for different sort of banks, and they kind of get to know the ins and outs of all of them.
Yeah.
I'm happy to share names. Like everyone, we have basically a monopoly in Canada with the big five banks. So
sure,
people are still going to deal with them.
Yeah, and I've been with the same bank personally since I was 15 or 16 years old. I got a debit card for the first time, and I just went to the same bank that my dad had gone to his entire life. Maybe still does, I think. I have no allegiances to them, but I'm only 33 or 34. I feel like I should know that. 34. Now I'm distracted. Yeah. I still remember when the bank was closed at 4 o'clock during the week, though.
Oh, you haven't looked at updated hours. Some of our local banks, so
they're still as bad.
They're not open a long time. It's going to be hit and miss. I think locally there's a few that are open, which is kind of one of the secrets. Is every bank has a different focus, a different strategy. So some are like, hey, we're the bank that's open late.
Yeah.
Some are, we're not open late. We deal with people who
buzz off,
don't need to come in, or why come in? We have great online stuff.
Sure.
Or we come to you when you need mortgage documents signed or whatever. So they don't stay open late.
Yeah.
And that's from a small business standpoint. A lot of people like you just go with whoever they have their personal account with, or they go with who they've just always dealt with.
Yeah.
But depending on your industry or type of business, you might better be at another bank because they focus on that industry more or type of business.
Now I feel bad because I went with the green bank because my dad went there, and then I went with the dark blue bank when I opened Matty G Digital because I registered the business through an online app called Owner, OWNR, which I've spoken about here more than once. And they're either affiliated or they are owned by the dark blue bank, and they offered a free bank, or what do they do? They offered free registration if you went into the bank within like 90 days to actually open accounts with them. And then you look into it and you open these accounts, these online accounts only, and they're free every month. So it was like kind of a no-brainer. But
yeah, they had a good deal or you paid a service and you got a credit back or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, it was $80 to register the business, and then if you went in within 90 days, they would give you that $80 back, which they did, which was fine. I've never actually thought about what the different banks have to offer because maybe this is a marketing issue. 6 minutes into this podcast,
marketing, a lot of it is marketing.
But honestly, I'm of the belief, and I'm not thought very hard about it, they're all going to be the exact same.
They're all similar. None are bad, but there is again, I observe very closely because I'm always like, oh, I wonder what they're telling their employees or like what that strategy is. But, the dark blue bank and the light blue bank, I think are very good at businesses like yours and mine, where you have some basic needs. You're mostly going to deal online. You can basically get a free account. And then there's some little bits of charges. Other banks that I've been to and dealt with, they have like $5 a month accounts for similar things to us. Little bit different. They focus on something different, or they'll focus on professional service industries or something. And then they'll have better deals for something in that industry. So one of the secrets really is, I guess, understanding that there will be fees, and there's always fees for different things. Mm-hmm. We've been sort of conditioned that we should never pay for banking. It used to be in the old days, bank accounts were free, but interest rates were so high, they would just take your money, lend it out. That's how they made their money.
Sure.
Over time, they're like, oh, we can charge money for bank accounts, and we can charge you for kind of like cell phone plans when they used to be out, like number of transactions that you do. And now they're, I think, going through a cycle where they're trying to simplify stuff. It used to be like, well, 1 to 20 transactions was this much per month, and 20 to 50 is this much.
Yeah.
And, then they try to say, well, incentivize you to not write checks or not receive checks or use cash. So there's all these things that they do to make it easier for you to do business. And they've really, I think, moved most people online.
Yeah.
But there is fees for things like cash handling.
Sure.
So I know some people get really surprised when they start a business and they go in and they're like, deposit 10 grand in cash. And then they're like, what? They charged me money for that. But there's like a percentage fee for cash handling. And sometimes that is a different amount depending on the plan that you're on. But there's a fee for the bank to do that. It's basically businesses who are paying for tellers to stand there.
Interesting. And I work with, like I said, the dark blue bank, and I'm on this online plan. It's unlimited transactions, which is good. But I've tried to get checks from them. There's no way they're handing over checks to me. They will basically forbid it, which is frustrating. And then also because there's certain times where I need to e-transfer a certain amount that's over my limit, which is like $2,000 a day. I have expenses that exceed $2,000. I sometimes have to send multiple e-transfers, which I think is total nonsense.
It's a pain. But if you want to open a different type of an account with probably a fee attached to it, it's available and it solves that problem. And that's where they've done a really good job of bringing you in as a small business, lower fees. You're like, oh, this is great. But at the end of the day, it's funneling you to a bigger relationship, and businesses is where the money gets made
Mhm.
in what we call retail banking, which would be like like small business commercial,
Mm.
versus like they make all their massive profits are like capital markets, different big things that the banks are in, but the person or business with a bank account, it's businesses that are making most of the money for them. So you get to a certain size and you're not really ever getting out of fees.
Sure.
You could just kind of maximize the fees you pay for what you actually do.
Mm-hmm. I've been frustrated now that I'm thinking about it a lot by this bank lately.
Yeah. And it's partly you outgrow the mini plan or whatever that you have. So sometimes, and this is, again, it's hard. Another secret is that people who work there are very, very busy,
Mhm.
and they're always, cutting people, reducing. So it's really hard to have a proper conversation with someone to like get, say, the right bank plan.
Sure.
Because there's no money in it for them. So they're going to be incentivized by like number of accounts they open, dollars that they lend out or take in as investments. So to come in and talk to Maddie G, who has a free bank account now and is going to move to one that's like maybe say $10 a month, it's not a big deal for them. What they really want though is long term is for you to like borrow a lot of money from them and keep all your money in their bank. So they're doing all of these things to sort of funnel you in and capture more of all your services.
Sure.
And with your share of wallet and keep you around for a long time.
Well, this is a marketing problem now because I've expressed concerns about the checks a couple times in the last couple of years, and no one's really addressed it. No one's talked to me about a different account. I get frustrated. I didn't mean to go this way. I apologize.
No, this is.
But like, I get frustrated too because I don't know who to reach out to. There. I don't know who my person is to talk to. So I tried booking a meeting online recently, a couple months ago, and it didn't work. They're like, we can't support this right now. So I emailed the person that I had previously spoken to a couple times. Super helpful. I don't think I heard back from him, so I don't think he works there anymore. And I'm now annoyed marketing-wise thinking about this. I'm like, okay, if I'm their target customer and they want me to do more, they don't send me anything useful or anything that provides me stakes to actually invest more with them. I think maybe they send me, no, they don't. I was going to say email marketing every month, and it's like X tips on how to do this. And it's like, I don't get any sort of like approach or sales or anything.
Yeah, I think that's a whole other marketing problem. And it's funny because I think I used to know one of their former like director of marketing for the Dark Blue Bank, lives in Fenland Falls and is with another bank nowadays. But I think those are the things they don't really think through the actual pain of the customer because they're so focused on money for them long term, and they're playing with big numbers, and it's a numbers game for them. But and then to loop it back to money, the stakes aren't that high for them, like because they're not going to make that much more on you. At the same time, I think in general they want to be open to the right person and the right conversations and be helpful to a certain extent to keep you around a long time. But in the old days, I think they would do backflips a little bit more to like really sort of show they were serving the customer. But my opinion on banks is they've cut so much that everyone's so overwhelmed that it's hard to really do that. Like I started in a small town bank. We hated losing customers. We rarely lost customers. So when you did, it was like something you hated and it was a big deal. And then it just starts happening more and more. People bounce around. You kind of get used to it. The other thing is sometimes the other places aren't better. So sometimes it's like, well, they can go over there if they want, but they'll be back because they realize we're actually better. But you have an interesting issue that I think crosses between like old-timey business and new-timey business with things like checks. And it also loops into just financial systems and how you accept payment, how you send payment, just structured as a business and like what's available with the bank, what's not, who can change it.
Hmm.
Sometimes things like e-transfer limits
Sure.
is just card limit thing that they can just change.
Right.
But it's also kind of a pain because, again, their archaic system, it's like, we need 10 signatures from you to like change how much money you can send.
Yeah.
And the employee can only do so much. Like we used to have what we called authority cards.
Mm.
So I could say, okay, Matt, you can send $5,000 a day as your limit. But if I needed it to be 10, then we had to get, credit approval, or somebody else would sign off on that. So there's like all these layers of
Sure.
barriers that make it really hard to solve relatively small problems.
Yeah, it is interesting though. Like the technology at the bank, and so much has changed in the less than, I was gonna say, 33 years that I've been alive. But I didn't get a bank card until like what, less than 20 years ago. But I remember, like I said, during the week, banks were only open to 4, and then they started promoting that they're open past 4. I remember my bank being one of the first banks to promote that they were open on Sundays.
Yeah.
I remember they were probably one of the first banks to be promoting their online banking, and then probably one of the first banks to do the online check depositing, which is cool. So like the Green Bank has been like always kind of cutting edge technology wise, and that's a short period of time. Like all those big 4 steps I think I just mentioned have changed in the last less than 15 years.
Yeah, it's fascinating just watching those strategies of like what they'll lead, what some will follow, some will choose to lead on certain things and not on other things. So
Yeah.
that's what's neat about the banks is they all kind of have a personality and who they fit with, and that's where I think they're in a business you want to find the one that fits you the best sometimes.
Yeah.
And not just think that they're all exactly the same. They all want money. They're all there to harvest money.
Sure.
The other secret to this podcast is there really are no bank secrets when you think about it. Like it's fairly sort of open. There's no magic tricks that they play in the background. There's a lot more things that are done manually. And they're all people, and people change their strategies and their tactics sometimes. So you just want to find the one that sort of is easy for you as a customer.
I guess years ago we wouldn't even like really think of banks as businesses, and now that's maybe completely different.
Maybe people might not have. They've always been businesses.
Absolutely.
Like they're part of the colonial experience of banking. I think there was a time, I think a golden era, and even the old timers I worked with, where it was about service and community, and they made money, but they didn't make a crazy amount. A friend of mine talks about the first time, the bank hit like $1 billion in profit, and now they're like multi-billions, and they just accelerated that over and over. So, it gets a little bit crazy, but, at one time it was a bit more about service. Every community had their bank or 2 banks. A friend of mine worked in Newfoundland, and in Newfoundland, some of the towns, it's like if you lived on this side of town, you dealt with BMO. If you lived on this side of town, you dealt with, say, CIBC, and the other ones weren't even a choice, right? Because you just dealt with who you dealt with. And I think now it's just changed a bit because sometimes, especially in business, some banks just don't deal with or lend to, say, certain industries. There was, or they do a really good job just to sort of buy all the business. Like I remember when I was with BMO, there was say chiropractors, professional services. There was another bank that was great for them. So like if we were comparing, it'd be like, yes, I can lend you, $100,000 line of credit. We could do this, 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 and this. The interest rate is, for round numbers, we'll say 10%. And then they'd go to the other bank and they'd have kind of the same thing, but the interest rate would be like 6%. So it's like not even close. So because they were focusing on them, whereas the bank where I was at, would go through rounds of, say, we're focusing on agriculture. So we want to be the agriculture bank, or car dealerships. We're going to be the best for car dealerships. And they always sort of, there's an ebb and flow where they will look at their whole portfolio. They'll try to like grow an area. And then if it gets too big, they're like, oh, too risky in that. So they'll like change and pull back. So it's kind of like a giant game going on a macro level that you're not always aware of, or it's not super clear. So you just have to know that things do change and not take it personally. And if you're in one of those businesses, you might have to just look around to see what else is available, or if there's somebody who's like hunting your type of business.
Interesting. How did the bank start making billions?
Oh, I think a lot of it's capital markets. Technology played a big part. Just how fast information can move, how fast it can be aggregated. There's a lot of it's a whole other either podcast or thing to look at. I'm trying to remember the author's name right now. Michael Lewis has some great books and great things to talk about it. He's the guy who wrote Moneyball, and he started his career as like a Wall Street trader, and he wasn't really a typical trader. So he's got some neat stories about that, but also just like things that impacted that industry, and which are kind of just crazy. But I think that's led to just the amplification of certain profits. So technology, big, and information, big impact on it. Kind of like almost every industry and why things have grown.
Sure.
But, the basic core of like collecting deposits, lending people money, have those mechanics have been the same and kind of continue to be the same. And fees is the biggest one. And, one of the theses of this episode is that small businesses, like as you grow, be prepared to pay bank fees.
Sure.
And like wrap your head around that. I think a lot of people want it to be free, which luckily it is for a certain amount of time, but know that there's always going to be a fee to collect money, no matter how you do it. So whether it's a online payment thing that takes a percentage, or the bank takes a percentage of the cash, there's a fee to handle and move around money. The bigger you get, the bigger those fees are going to be. If you're applying for credit, and this is another one, when you're applying for kind of small amounts of money, it's basically decided personally based on your own personal credit history and ability to borrow and some other factors. You can get a small line of credit for no real fees. But once you start kind of borrowing commercially, there's always an application fee.
Sure.
And this is a big thing that I know was when I was a lender, people would be like, what? I have to pay you money to apply for credit?
Yeah.
And like every time you apply
right
as well. So it's like, if you need a little bit more, or you need a new loan for something, it's like, well, here we go for fees again. So it becomes almost like a budget item of like, as you grow and need more credit, you have to apply for that, because there's a lot of work that happens to get you approved.
Sure.
They don't just sit back and be like, oh, that's a great idea, like Dragon's Den. Here's your money, right? It's always based on analysis. It's sometimes usually based on your ability to pay for it, based on how your company is right now.
Right.
So it's like they kind of have to trust that what you're going to do is going to work, and you'll be able to make more money and keep paying them. But their number one goal is revenue and not losing money.
Right.
Beyond that, they don't really care if you do well as a business owner, as long as you pay your loans.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Like you could be making nothing, but if your loans are up to date, like you are happy.
Yes.
Or they are happy. So that's another thing. It's like, so being really cautious of just when you want money and what you want it for, because there's going to be a fee attached to that.
Interesting. Awesome. I know you've got notes over there. Do you want to rapid fire all of your secrets?
Rapid fire.
Except starting with number one, bank secrets that there are no bank secrets, you said?
Yeah, they're not really secrets because I'm telling them to you. No one's going to get mad at me and be like, you shouldn't have told them that we want fees and profit. I'm doing some marketing for them because people don't understand that there's fees sometimes. The other one is the banks are going to be super cheap. So, like, if you're talking to somebody, they're going to maybe have the worst equipment. They're not going to have maybe assistance that they need. Their systems, technology aren't going to flow smoothly. They're probably always a few years behind. So that's more why banks are slow. People are like, "Oh, I need to borrow money. I'd like to get this decision fast," but they don't have the technology or processes or people to really do that because they're always running with too little.
Mm.
What links to that is like the job's also really hard. So if you're what the job I was in, commercial account manager, the breadth of what you're responsible for is like impossible to possibly meet.
Sure.
And every account manager is going to have the things that they're better at than others. So some are great at talking to you. Some are maybe great at structuring what you're going to do. Some are great at getting it done. Some are great at administering it. Nobody's good at all of those things. So you might have somebody who's terrible at communicating, but they're good at administering and getting like paperwork done. And it just is frustrating to deal with.
Sure.
Others are going to be great to talk to. They're going to phone you, but they're never going to follow through on some of the details sometimes. So that's something you just want to be aware of. A couple of other things. Don't look to them for sort of affirmation. Some people are like, oh, the bank gave me money. Must be a great idea. I would say that's not true. At the same time, if they don't give you money, it doesn't necessarily mean your idea is bad either. So you really need to, I think, seek out some other perspectives. The bank in general, they want to be nice to you because they want a chance at your relationship long term. So one of the things I hear, but I've never think it ever happens, is people be like, oh, the bank laughed in my face. I'm like, I don't think that happened because every banker I've ever worked with, they don't want to lose you long term. They'd rather have your mortgage and investments for your whole life than like kick you to the curb because of a pitch that didn't really align with what they're doing. So you really have to I think seek out others. The other thing is sometimes you're in the wrong industry. So one bank was maybe never going to say yes. So you have to go find someone who understands it and probably will say yes. I had lots of loans I declined, or I was like, we can't do anything here. And then they'd be approved by someone else like in 2 days.
Sure.
And I'd have no idea how that possibly happened. And then the opposite would be true as well. People would come in and be like, oh, they said, no, I can't do anything. And I'd be like, I don't see why. And then we'd go through our process and do up the deal and it'd be done. So,
interesting.
Keep moving through that. The other one is just, I think we touched on it, but the bank doesn't lend to ideas, right? They lend to businesses. If you're brand new, they typically don't lend to startups or new people. It's usually on the strength of you as a borrower. If you're like 18 years old trying to start a business, you're probably not getting $100,000 from the bank. If you're middle-aged and they can put a security on your house, they're probably going to find a way to give you some money, but it's not because of your business. It's other factors. And they really just want their money back. So that's the biggest thing.
Classic business people.
Yeah, the bank, I remember people in collections is like the best way to pay back a loan is through regular agreed upon payments. So they may check in on the health of your business. If they agree to a 10-year loan, they're happy with that 10 years. I know sometimes people are like, oh, the bank will be really happy if I pay them off quicker.
They'd rather have cash flow over that term.
Yeah, right? They want the cash flow. Yeah, they'll take it back. They'll do whatever, but they want to then lend you more money.
Yeah.
If you're a growing business, they love you.
Yeah.
because you're always going to be growing. You're always going to be needing more cash. You're always going to be restructuring a bit financially. And that's just, application fee after application fee and sort of more and more balances. So they're going to love that
Yeah.
from you. So
That's awesome.
if you think about that, that sort of sheds a lot of light on it. Any other thoughts?
I feel like one day, I don't know if it's going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 100 years from now, someone's going to listen to this podcast in some archive and they're going to be like, what's a bank?
Yeah.
Because everything's going to be in crypto and this whole podcast will be irrelevant.
That's awesome. It'd be really fascinating to talk about. And just briefly before we go, to tease people, one of the things I was super interested a few years ago was financial tech, like fintech companies. And a lot of them have just disappeared. They were like alternatives to the bank, and they're like, we're better than the bank. They invest in all this technology. And what either happened is they couldn't get scale, so they shut down, or the banks bought their technology and shut them down.
Yeah.
So it will be fascinating to see if the banks really change. I think they will slowly, or if someone will really disrupt them, which would be fascinating. And same with the impact on sort of crypto and that technology.
Yeah.
I think if the banks really get into sort of blockchain type of stuff, they could legitimately change. But that stuff is kind of all created to like eliminate sort of the institution of the bank. So it's not to their best interest to do it. They want to block it because they want to keep, charging money for you to be able for me to pay you. They want their cut.
Right.
The whole idea of like crypto is that we don't need the bank
right
in the middle.
Yeah.
So it'd be fascinating to see how the secrets change over the next couple of decades. So
stay tuned.
Stay tuned. We will do an updated show in 20 years from now. You heard it here first. All right. Before we leave, we didn't mention off the top, but we have a new initiative, which is coffees on Monday morning at Thrive Co-working Community. So if you're listening and you are a business owner in Kawartha Lakes, join us 8:30 Monday mornings for coffee at Thrive Co-working Community. At what street number are you?
18 Kent Street West in downtown Lindsay.
All right. So please do that. If you would like to talk about bank secrets as they relate to your business, or if you are endlessly frustrated and want to chat with us how to maybe get a better banking deal or navigate that better, please reach out. We're at kawarthasmallbusinesspodcast.ca. We want to help you start, grow, or recharge your business. So you can send us an email to set it up at kawarthasmallbusinesspodcast.ca.